Hi, it's Evelyn from Awesome Training. I'm going to talk about burnout in adults because I often get these queries from parents of autistic adults saying that they've lost their social skills. So I want to talk about that because we cannot lose what's not ours in the first place. So I can understand why someone, usually a concerned parent, sees it this way. But when I get this sort of request, I hear they're in burnout. And I'm going to explain why. So, contrary to misguided beliefs that autistics lack social skills and need robust support in this area, in reality, we don't. Current research shows that autistic people are actually really good communicators. We're really good at communicating with other autistics, which is the same as non autistics. They also are really good at communicating with each other. So research carried out in Edinburgh University in 2020 shows that where there's a mismatch in neurotypes, there's a mismatch in communication. So this research shows something different. It shows that autistic people and people who are not autistics simply have different ways of communicating. No one is deficient in social skills. It's just that we have communication differences. This happens across cultures and is dependent on a large number of factors that I call the 6 S's of social interaction, which I'll go into in other videos. So can we lose our social skills? Well, we need to ask what affects our ability to communicate with one another. And there are several factors. Everything from the weather to how we feel about ourselves in the moment, to what we ate that day, to early childhood trauma and our education. So why do I think burnout when I get a request to help a person who has lost their social skills? Here's why. We know autistics are often forced to conform to non-autistic ways of communication and being. This includes forced eye contact, looking at the person who's speaking, giving non-autistic, non-verbal listening cues, turn taking in conversation, mimicking non-autistic body language and ways of interacting. We also know that autistics are often shamed for our wonderful way of communicating. We're told we're too blunt or rude, shouldn't question authority, shouldn't ask for clarification. We're often shamed for our bodily movements or our stims, and we can be excluded because of our interests or for sharing them with passion. Autistics are othered. This then leads to masking, which is a stress response or trauma response to being constantly rejected and shamed in our social world, which makes us feel unsafe. Sometimes masking is often described as something we do to fit in, but then this should raise the question, shouldn't it? Why are autistics not allowed in? Why are we putting ourselves under such stress to fit in? Unfortunately, this question doesn't seem relevant to many, and instead of looking at our social world for solutions, many place the burden on autistics to do the expected behaviour or to hide who we truly are so that others find us more acceptable. So we need to be asking, why are autistics excluded and marginalised? Why is our way of being not celebrated? But I digress a bit. Masking, locking your sensitive, true, beautiful self away deep inside and burrowing it under versions of what others want us to be or what we perceive others want us to be is often our best chance at survival. So masking is a survival technique. And yes, lots of people mask to some extent, but for autistics, trying to be what everyone else wants us to be day in, day out takes its toll. Masking doesn't just involve like masquerading, like putting on your front door voice or your telephone voice or posing for pictures or for your Instagram. Masking is about protecting ourselves and constantly assessing risk in everyday interactions, which others take for granted. We're constantly on high alert because we don't feel safe in our social environment. Not because we lack social skills, but because we lack acceptance in our social world. This effort takes its toll, which is why when people talk about loss of social skills or regression, I hear burnout. I hear the untold story of this person who's exhausted from trying to meet the expectations of others and yet never quite getting there. I hear their unwritten tale of constant shame. I hear their internal monologue where their inner critic spends most of its time telling them how useless they are. I see their struggles to make friends only to be met with rejection time and time again. I see their stress when met with a seemingly harmless question like, "What music do you like?" That question and others like it can sound like a threat at times. Why? Because there's a huge risk involved. What if I say I like this music? How might they respond? The last time I answered this the way, I got this response. The 50 other times I answered the question, I got these 50 responses. And then we run through all 50 neatly stored, shameful experiences of when we answered this question, but somehow got it wrong. Masking means that we're constantly on high alert, constantly searching for perceived threats, constantly assessing and constantly creating ways to survive. So when I hear they lost their social skills, I know they did not. And before we get Bo Peep in with her search party or Nurse Nancy with her big book of social skills, we need to look at what is really going on inside that autistic person. I know that they were playing many different roles adapted and created based on other people's reactions, roles carefully crafted through sleepless nights and waking hours, spinning like plates on sticks, always waiting to come crashing down with the slightest hint of rejection from someone else. A life lived in fear of more rejection, and of being truly seen and rejected for it. And so the effort eventually takes its toll and everyday performance becomes too much. So we lose that ability to mask, to pretend. We do not lose our social skills because they were never our social skills to begin with. They're someone else's social skills. They lost their social skills, means that they're in burnout. They're just too exhausted to keep all those plates spinning. So the plates fall. And we're left with a very stressed, tired, exhausted, burnt out person who could have been so different had the world only let them in as they were. This is the reality for so many autistics. Let's make more room for autistics in the social world we all share.